already knew that Forza Horizon 5 was whipping its way on the PS5, but now we know exactly when it'll cross the finish line. It's Sunday, so it's gotta be sensational. I'm Mike, and I'm back to talk about the gaming news. And what's been popping in the news lately is a game from 4 years ago, Forza Horizon 5. So in January, Playground Games announced that Forza Horizon 5 was coming to PS5 in spring, but there was no exact release date given at the time. This was a surprising announcement because, like I mentioned at the time, they're putting a racing game on a console that already has an exclusive racing series with Gran Turismo. But now, we got the exact release date, so we'll know exactly when in the spring it'll be springing on the PS5. That's probably too many puns this early in the video. So Forza Horizon 5 is officially coming to PS5 on April 29th. They also confirmed that it'll support crossplay with the Xbox and PC versions of the game. It's going to be $60 for the standard edition, $80 for the deluxe edition that comes with their car pass, and the premium edition that's $100 that basically comes with everything, including all the DLC, and you can play it 4 days early on April 25th. It'll also run at either 30 frames per second in fidelity mode or 60 in performance mode on both PS5 and PS5 Pro, but the Pro version will get enhanced visuals according to what Playground Games said. Now, the one thing that's kind of weird aside from the pricing, but I'll get to that in a minute, is that they're not doing a physical release for the game. All of the versions of the game are just going to be digital, and Playground Games said that they don't have any current plans to release a physical version of the game. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the price. While this is a new game for PS5, it also has been out since 2021, so I feel like charging full price for all the additions is a bit weird, but I did check Steam and it's still $60 on there for the PC version, so I guess they just never discounted it. I'm just used to those games dropping in price to $50 or even $40. That would have made it a little bit easier to swallow for a game from 2021, but it is the first Forza game that Xbox has put on the PS5, so I guess they figured they can get away with that pricing. Plus, it's a 4-year-old game, so they've probably already made most of the money that they're going to make off the game. And this is just to reignite interest and get some extra money on an older game that's basically already done and finished. They just had to port it to PS5. But let me know in the comments if you're planning on picking up Forza Horizon 5 for PS5. But I already know what game people in Japan won't be picking up anymore for the Nintendo Switch, and that's Super Formation Soccer. Since Switch Online came out, Nintendo has been slowly adding older games to it over time to build its retro game library. But we hadn't really seen any games go off of the service. Well, that is until now. So Nintendo Japan announced that Super Formation Soccer will be leaving Switch Online on March 28th. There wasn't a reason given, but it is a third-party game, so it's possible that the license for it just expired, as mentioned by the Polygon article. The version of the game we have in the US, which is just Super Soccer, doesn't seem to be affected at this time, so it's not clear if that version will also be leaving Nintendo Switch Online service as well. Now, personally, I've never played the game before, but I picked up the story because it is the first time that a game has been removed from their Retro Online library. Now, it's not a huge deal right now, especially because we don't even know what's going to happen with Switch Online with the Switch 2. Is it even going to offer retro games as part of the service? Or if any of that stuff is even going to be carried over to Switch Online for the Switch 2. For now, I'm just going to wait it out and see what happens with the retro games library on Switch Online when the Switch 2 comes out later this year. Alright, it's time for what again has unfortunately become a weekly tradition, and that's talking about layoffs and studio closures. Similar to last week, we got 2 stories about layoffs, so let's start with Striking Distance. So Striking Distance formed in 2019 and was founded by the creator of the original Dead Space game. So their first game was essentially a more modernized version of Dead Space called Callisto Protocol, which released in 2022. But unfortunately for them, EA decided to make a Dead Space remake, which at the time was really well received, so it kind of got overshadowed by that game and didn't perform up to expectations. Then in 2023, the founder left the studio and they laid off 32 people. Now it's been confirmed that they've done even more layoffs. Layoffs initially got out there when a former staff member started saying that most of the developers at the studio have lost their jobs. Then finally, the parent company of Striking Distance, Krafton, put out a statement about it, basically saying the studio is still open and the layoffs aren't going to affect any of the studio's ongoing projects. They didn't say how many people were laid off or if they're offering any kind of support for the former employees. I actually talked about Krafton quite a bit last year because they were the ones who purchased the Hi-Fi Rush IP and Tango Gameworks from Microsoft after they shut them down. So hopefully they don't suffer a similar fate to Striking Distance under Krafton. Now the second and way bigger story is from WB Games. So WB Games has announced that they're closing 3 studios. They're closing WB San Diego, which formed in 2019 and focused on mobile and free-to-play games. Player First Games, which also formed in 2019, they're the studio behind Multiverses, which I recently covered because they announced it would be shutting down. And last but definitely not least is Monolith, which out of the three is the biggest studio that they're shuttering. So Monolith was founded in 1994 and was purchased by WB in 2004. But just to name a few games that they made games like the Thier series, Matrix Online, and most recently the Shadow of Mordor series, which was pretty big for WB. They were also working on the upcoming Wonder Woman game, which has been canceled in the wake of these announcements. The crazy thing is with these closures is none of these studios put out a bad game. Yes, Multiverse is shut down, but it was pretty popular at launch, it just didn't have the long tail that WB wanted. The Shadow of Mordor series had also been really well received, and Monolith was actively working on their next big game, so it's not like they put out a bad game and it was a flop and now they're closing them. They just got closed down. Now, WB San Diego, I'm not sure how their games performed or how they were received because I don't really play many mobile games, so I'm not familiar with that space. But either way, closing all these studios that have put out good games is insane. Now, WB's statement basically said that they're restructuring and they want to focus on their key franchises, which are Harry Potter, Mortal Kombat, DC, and Game of Thrones. Basically, with the Wonder Woman game, which is DC, didn't they just say that that was one of their key franchises? Anyway, they said it wasn't possible for them to give people the highest quality experience with the iconic character with their shift in strategic priorities. Whatever that means. They did thank all the employees that they let go, but again, they didn't mention how many people they were letting go between the three studios or what kind of support they're offering to people after they've lost their job. I really hope this trend doesn't continue, but it's early in the year, so unfortunately, I really don't think that we'll be done with mass layoffs and closures anytime soon. All right, after all that bad news, we gotta finish up with some good-ish news. Well, it's at least good for consumers because the product is getting a big price cut, and that's what we're talking about today. And our final story. So the PSVR2 launched 2 years ago, and while the tech behind it was good, it was $550, which was more expensive than the PS5 itself and not really worth it for a headset that can only play things on PS5. Then shortly after the release, there were rumors that came out that it wasn't selling as well as Sony expected because again, it was a console accessory that costs more than the console that it needs to work. Then last year, we saw the first big sales on the headset, which was when I personally picked up one, and we saw them release an adapter to make it compatible with PC, which I also picked up, by the way, and have neglected to do a video on. Anyway, Sony has now announced a permanent price cut for the PSVR2. So the PSVR2 will now retail for $400 for both the Horizon Call of the Mountain bundle and the headset itself, which is a little weird that the one without the included game isn't cheaper now. But it's still $150 less for the headset and $200 less for the bundle. I feel like if they're reducing the price permanently, they must have saw a big uptick in purchases when they did those big discounts last year. And also, I just feel like they're just trying to get those things out of their warehouses. When I got mine last year, I was pretty sure it was one of the ones that was manufactured before launch. So I'm sure that they're not moving the way that Sony wants them to. It's also rumored that they're partnering with Apple so they can use the PSVR2 controllers with their headsets for games. So at this point, I just feel like they're trying to clear out their inventory. But I do feel like $400 is a way more reasonable price, especially now that it has PC compatibility. But let me know what you think down in the comments. Are you considering picking up a PSVR2 now that it's dropping in price? Again, let me know down below. And if you enjoyed this video, then make sure to tell a friend, tell a coworker, like, share, and subscribe, and hit that bell notification button thing wherever it is to be notified when I drop a video or a live stream. And always do at least 2 things at the same time. We out.